Hello folks and welcome to the show here in OurGame. Myself Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Michael Verney. We're here with OurGaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Michael, let's call a spade a spade. It wasn't the most brilliant weekend of football, but it was a huge weekend in the sense that we now know that the All-Ireland semi-finals are going to be Dublin against Monaghan and Derry against Kerry. So again, they do promise to be big matches. We were disappointed by what we saw, but ultimately those teams are through. And one thing that someone replied to me saying was 3 games in 14 days was probably a bit much for a lot of the teams coming up against group winners who had the weekend off. Monaghan were the only team to actually win from that position. So that's not ideal. But then again, like if you win your group, you do deserve to have some sort of an edge. And maybe that's how it panned out.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of advantage from it. Just actually when you say it there, it makes Monaghan's achievement even more remarkable. The fact that they played 3 games in, I think it was 15 days for them. They went to extra time and they went to penalties and they still managed to get over the line. We'll have Drew Wylie on later on and we'll chat him, I'm sure, about his own experiences in the camp. And obviously his brother is still involved. But I don't know, if you could bottle what Monaghan have, every team in the country would take it. Like there's just literally no end to them. They're like a bad smell that won't go away in the most positive way possible. They're unbelievable. Let's call it a spade. Vinnie Corey was not the number one choice for that job. There were other names being floated around, the likes of Jason Sherlock and others. And there probably wasn't too many that wanted it at the stage he took it. And look at where he's brought them. First semi-final since 18. Am I right in saying the previous semi-final appearance was like back in the 80s, I think, even with Nudie Hughes and the boys back then. So it's a fair achievement, and that was probably the most dramatic part of the weekend. The penalties are just it's just mad watching it, and we get Drew's experience watching it from the stands. I can't imagine what it's like for a lad who's only gone a year to be sitting in the stand watching that.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. There was some bad stuff that happened during the match, and look, we might as well look at it here. There was a bit of yowling in the hill, like how did he hear forward? It's pretty tasty stuff. We won't leave it up for all that long, but like I'll tell you my experience of I went over to Croke Park, that was on Saturday, of course. And it was going to be the second game. And I don't want to tear all supporters with the one brush because, of course, that's only a select few there. And you're talking about a stadium with, give or take 70,000 or whatever it was. But there was a couple of individuals going around. And, like, I remember pulling up at the crossroads where that, the Summer Hill pub, whatever it's called at the moment. It used to be called the Brendan Behan pub, which is, the sad irony of naming a pub after somebody who died from alcoholism, is a little bit in bad taste. But anyway, there was a lad just waiting at the crossroads, a young lad, and he had a bottle of wine that he was drinking by the neck. And this was, early in the day. What time did the first game start? Was
3:45, yeah.
3:45. I was probably getting there an hour beforehand. So,
that was only going to end one way anyway.
And maybe he had a grand day. I don't know, but I saw, him drinking.
He had a grand day in his head, I'm sure, but maybe not for a lot of people around him.
Yeah, and drinking a bottle of wine by the neck at that hour of the day, and your match with your team not starting until 6 o'clock that evening. I mean, how much of the game are you even going to be able to take in? And I just don't again. I don't want to tire all supporters.
Well,
with the one
we can't because it is a select few, and generally when you go to most matches, and I don't think I've really been at a match where I've seen anything like that. But I haven't been on the hill for a big championship game like this. And obviously the drama was flowing on Saturday night. But the GA actually made a statement on it to the Irish Independent yesterday. Quite a strong statement as well. And it would be terrible if it came to this. So a GA spokesperson said, the Twitter images in circulation represent unacceptable behaviour from a small number of Armagh and Monaghan supporters. The incident was monitored closely by the stadium events team at the time, and there were several arrests and ejections from the terrace. Terraces are an important part of the atmosphere associated with GA games. They feature all over the country and provide colour, noise and affordable tickets. And that's like they do, and there's some colour on the terrace, and I love the odd occasion I get to go to the terrace. But the spokesperson said, this type of behaviour, if left unchecked, could ultimately lead to the iconic Hill 16 converting to an uncovered stand. We appeal to all our great supporters not to let a small group of people take away an important part of our heritage. Like, imagine if we did lose, the hill because of incidents like this. Funny enough, I was chatting to somebody yesterday, someone who would go to a lot of the Dublin matches, and he just said, like, you really actually have to be braced for a day on the hill. He said to me, your core is going to be engaged for the 3 or 4 hours that you're there. There's people jumping about you. There'll be all sorts of barbs thrown. There'll be lads rubbing off each other and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? It's, it is an experience in itself, but we don't like the colour of the hill, the noise of the hill. Is brilliant for the game. When it goes too far, then, and the idea of possibly losing the hill would be, that'd be terrible, realistically.
Yeah.
It's something special. And I know a lot of people come to Croke Park and like, what's the story with this? And it looks so unique when you look at the rest of the stadium, and there's such a great story to it. It would be terrible to lose it, especially, as you said there, for what is generally a small fraction of people and their behaviour.
Yeah, Jack says, was in the hill for the game, some bad stuff going on from a small few. And that's the whole thing. We know it is a small few, but it's brutal all the same.
And I hate that as well, Shane, as well. And it's always the way. And any incident or any video that comes from around the country, there's a couple of idiots doing something they shouldn't be doing, or saying something to a ref that they shouldn't be saying, or saying something to a player that they shouldn't be saying. And then it's the GA has a problem, or, everyone in the GA, the vast, vast majority behave exactly as they're supposed to behave. Unfortunately, there's a couple of idiots that kind of bring everybody else down with them. And hopefully nothing like, we won't see anything like this, or this will be stamped out. I imagine security is going to have to be a lot more stringent in the hill. You're probably going to have maybe you're going to have to get to the stage where you're going to have a few plainclothes stewards maybe in around the middle, just to make sure that everything is okay. And even saying that, it shouldn't come to that really either, but it's kind of looking like it kind of is coming to that.
Yeah, and like the other thing is, it isn't a GAA problem. It's just a reflection of society. Whatever you see in GAA is a reflection of what you see in society all the time. We saw rows at an FAI Cup match or whatever it was, League of Ireland match not so long ago, down at the Horse Show House, which is in Dublin 4, not a million miles away from where I am. Like, these things happen in all walks of society. Maybe not too many rugby matches now, if I'm honest. But Porter says, Kerry won't get past the quarters. Second-year syndrome will kick in for Jack O'Connor. Kerry very average, poor without Clifford and Sean. Quotes from Varley and Poachers, so they'll have to defend themselves. And I think Enda Varley has a nice bit to answer for, because he didn't say they, or he said they wouldn't get past the quarter-final. Column Lyons Blind Spot says, should Armagh change to an all-white kit and rename themselves Armagh Hotspur? Delighted for them, myself personally. Poor track record of discipline the last few years, on and off the field. Will we talk about the Dublin Mayo game yesterday?
Yeah, I was in the Curragh, so I was only watching highlights of it. And David Jennings from the Racing Post just kept saying to me throughout the first half, Dublin are gone here. Legs are gone. Mayo are going to win this game. And he only clicked back into the middle of the second half, and it was like the game was completely over and had turned completely on its head. You obviously saw a lot more than I did. Mayo obviously had that disallowed goal that maybe could have turned the game maybe in their favour at the time. Just talk me through the flip between the first half and the second half. Was it Mayo's game? Was their pace decreasing, or was it just Dublin going up another gear?
Well, like, it was as if Mayo had a gun in their hands. They had a look around. They looked down at their foot, pointed the gun at it, pulled the trigger really hard on their own foot. Like, if you know the way with Mayo, if they ducks, they drown, and there's all the different things over the years, like scoring the 2 own goals. Like, in this situation, they just completely shot themselves in the foot. They gave away goals by, number one, like Pádraig O'Hora had a tough job up against Colin Basquel. And because Mayo had pushed up, it was always going to be really difficult. And if good ball went in, you're going to be up against a really dynamic player, who's, of course, family background is from Borris-Lee, I might add. But so when he got ball in, it was going to be very difficult for O'Hora, because like, he's obviously a very game defender, but he's not really lightning pace. And again, it kind of, you wondered why Enda Hession didn't start anyway, because of his pace. And I know people will say, oh, but you get some bounce out of him in the second half. True, but you might actually get a 70-minute bounce out of him if you just start him.
Well, a player like that, anyway, with the pace that he has, like, there's no reason he wouldn't stay going for the full match and more if needed, you know?
Yeah, so number one, I think O'Hora was probably a little bit kind of, spooked a bit by Basquel. So when that high ball came in for that first goal, he more or less wasn't even facing it, and Jack Coyne was preoccupied by his own man. And it was just one of those things where, I understand defenders generally have to keep an eye on the man as, at sometimes ahead of the ball, but he got a little bit lost. So for me, that was Mayo bad defending. They gifted a goal to Dublin. Then a little while later, the goal in the second half, I think it was it Sam Callinan who was trying to let the ball roll out over the end line? And I was looking
so good from Mannion, because he was on the blind side, and Callinan probably couldn't have seen him, but it was just brilliant. And all of a sudden, the ball's towed out, a pick up by Costello, pass across, like 3 or 4 seconds later, the ball is in the net, whereas it should have been a Mayo kick out and the ball should have been down the far end.
And I was looking at it as Callinan was trying to let go of the end line. I was like, no, don't do it. And then it was just like so inevitable. And brilliant ball fed across, and Basquel panned it into net.
Can I just say to you about Davy Byrne's ball in for the first goal? That is when you put a high ball in. That's when you put a ball in the square. There was nobody. It was 2-on-2. There was nobody minding the house. And I think that's a dream for a manager or a coach, that you have a player that sees when the opportunity is on. There's times when it's on, there's times when it's not on. But interestingly enough, how often, I would say very, very few goals have come from a direct kick down the middle. There was no diagonal ball. There was nothing like that. It was just the opportunity was there. He took it. As you said, O'Hora kind of got a bit lost under the high ball, and Pascal took advantage. Who we have to mention as well. I look back on the 2021 semi-final there during the week, and he had a nightmare when he came in, and he kicked a wide, got a black card. He probably said himself, even he was one of the main reasons why they lost that day. He just had a bit of a horror show. And then to come back 2 years later, he's of the same vintage as Owen Merchant and a few of them. But this is as Conor McCarthy said in the paper this morning, it's his third coming at 27. Do you know what I mean? He scored 2-2 in an All-Ireland semi-final. And they were crying out for a player like that. Someone off the beaten track a small bit. All the big names, but they were crying out for someone like that to step up. And in fairness, he did step up.
Yeah, and I'm sure Ballyboden would love him to stay hurling as well, wasn't it? 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, he scored, was it a hat-trick against Cool Derry?
3-5, I think. He's just so dynamic, 3-5 in Parnell, he's obviously able to play both,
so he scored 2-2 in this game, 5-16 in the championship so far. Only 1 point of that has been a free. The lad is in all-star territory, isn't he?
Oh, God, he is, definitely. It's funny talking about all-stars. There's a couple of lads you think are nailed down, but you're never nailed down. Conor McCarthy from Monaghan would be another one. He's their second top scorer playing wing back. Is he
really a wing back? He's wearing number 7, and fair enough, he might play deeper, but teams attack as 15 and defend as 15, really. So he's generally still part of that kind of setup, and he's a little bit deeper. He's not waiting for it inside and just shooting from distance. So
it's a way of getting a lad like that out of the grasp of a cornerback or a wing back and letting him charge forward and attack at pace. That's kind of, sometimes in modern football now, you can do as much damage from wing back as you can from corner forward, and that's Conor McCarthy's probably a clear example of that. Basquel is definitely forefront in the running for an all-star as well. Amazing to think Kieran Kilkenny didn't start yesterday. There was talk of a shoulder injury, but the Dublin bench press is back, and it's back big time. Even Dean Rock coming on and kicking a point when he came in, and being able to bring McCaffrey in. All the pieces. I thought Colin Keys had a great line in the paper this morning. I just thought it kind of summed it up really well. He was just talking about, how, what was the line exactly? He compared them basically to a band coming back from for a farewell tour after several sound checks throughout the season. They finally hit the right pitch, and they have. And I think the exciting thing from the weekend is Dublin looked like they've raised it a couple of gears and are where they want to be. And Kerry looked like they're exactly where they want to be as well. And while we have semi-finals to come, outside of Derry and Monaghan, I think we all know what final we want to see.
We'll ask Drew Wylie about it in a little while, but even though he's a sub, I'm wondering, is Conor McManus going to end up with an all-star as well? Because, geez, that performance was unreal. But just to come back to Mayo and Dublin, I just wondered about the Jordan Flynn one, right? So the rule is kind of specific. You can't lift it up off the ground with your legs. Number one, Is that a good rule? It probably is, yeah, because then you'd have lads lying on top of the ball in the middle of a ruck and then trying to get it up that way.
Yeah, knees down, ball in. Yeah. But was it on the ground? That's the thing.
Yeah, and you know what? He put it in the back of the net. I don't know if the whistle had gone and the Dublin players had already kind of stopped a little bit.
Yeah.
So, right. So there was that incident, fair enough. The other opportunities where Mayo had to score a goal. So the second point that Mayo scored, it was a lovely catch by Aidan O'Shea over Davy Burke. I actually think he nudged him in the back, but he did it quite sneakily and well. I say that as a positive. So this is 8 minutes in. He kicked the ball in for Ryan O'Donoghue, and he turned and whipped it over the bar, even though he had Jordan Flynn coming on the loop. And Flynn would have been one-on-one running at a defender going into the 21. So I think that's not, like, fair enough, Ryan O'Donoghue got his 3 points from play, and you'll take that off an inside forward any day. But you have to sort of work the goal opportunities when they're on. And this is something Mayo don't do over the years in the big games. Ryan O'Donoghue had one blocked at one stage as well. I'm trying to remember that one. Oh, yeah, he was close to goal. Enda Hessian had worked the ball in. McLaughlin, of course, on the follow-up then hit the post. So, like, geez, if it was at the other end for an own goal, fine well that a Mayo player would have put it into his own net. But, like, obviously he tried to put it in the net, so you can't be critical of him. But, it just has to go in. And at that stage, it would have made it 2-10 to 1-9. You're back to a 4-point game. It would have been, a typical Mayo. Now, we'll put ourselves in a perilous position and we'll push it the whole way. They might have come back from there. But then Dublin just tagged on 2 of the next 3 points, and it was just game over.
Yeah, the old McLaughlin one, I couldn't help but think that was his, unfortunately, that was his Ronnie Rosenthal moment. Ronnie with the famous open goal hitting the crossbar. I think he did it again in an FA Cup game for Southampton years later. That was the original one was in 1992. But they would needed a spark then, and maybe that would have given them the spark. We've seen them kind of resurrect from very unlikely situations before, so maybe that would have been the spark that they needed. But Dublin just kicked on. James McCarthy, something else, Shano, isn't he? He's just he had probably a tough first half from what I saw, and he just thundered into it in the second half. He was unstoppable, really. It does look like the band, as I said, is back together for one last hurrah. They've scratched that Mayo itch now. They probably Derry beat them Derry beat them in the league, and they'd love another crack at them. They're not getting them. They're getting Monaghan in a semi-final, and what's waiting for them is Kerry after last year. And you'd have to say, like, that's probably the main reason Cluxton's back. It's probably the main reason Mannion is back. It's probably the main reason McCaffrey's back. It's probably the main reason James McCarthy stayed on, Nick Fitzsimons, etc. as well. So it's teed up for that, one of the biggest All-Ireland finals of all time. But Derry and Monaghan I'm sure they'll have plenty to say. And they're going to be, Derry will be, 2-1, 9-4 underdogs. Monaghan will be massive underdogs going into the semi-final, but definitely would have to say the two farm teams that have stepped up now when they really need it are Dublin and Kerry.
Yeah, I think everyone expects Monaghan to, bow out in the semi-final after a very good season. And fair play to Vinnie Corey, first year, and like you said, there was other people touted, Ger Brennan and as well as Jason Sherlock. But it is very difficult to imagine that Dublin won't win that game or eke it out at some stage. And like, look at some of the other players that started. They weren't named to start, but obviously it's not like they were told 5 minutes beforehand. This would have been the plan during the week. Dummy team name Paul Mannion got himself a couple of points as the game wore on. Cormac Costello started very well. He ended up with 5. 2 of those were from play. Con actually, to be fair, like they kept the ball away from Con a nice bit, and David McBride kind of stuck to him pretty well. And like over the years, people don't really do that well against Con. He eventually got a couple of points. So there's actually more to come from the likes of Con. Kieran Kilkenny, assuming that he gets himself fit. Brian Fenton started to come into the game as it wore on. As you said, James McCarthy, what a brilliant finish to the game he had. It's starting to look good for them again. Like Owen Merchant, the way he won a couple of 50-50 balls early in the game, the way Dublin were able to tie down the likes of Tommy Conroy, but they stopped getting ball inside, didn't they? They just shot themselves in the foot, really.
Totally. And the thing about it, and you kind of mentioned it there earlier, is when they were on top, they needed to go for the throat. They probably needed a 3 or 4 point buffer at half time, realistically. And they're much the better team in the first half. And again, went in 1 down. Then all of a sudden, was it 1-7 to nearly to no score? I think Dublin hit at the start of the second half. Mayo only hit 3 points in the second half. Like maybe that's a factor of the playing 3 weekends in a row and going through that preliminary quarter final, having to get up for Galway last weekend and then come and make the longest trip of anybody to Croke Park and everything that comes with that. I'm not sure, but how would you rate Mayo's season? How would you rate Kevin McStay's first year in charge? They obviously won a league, they lost a fair few championship games. They beat Kerry and Killarney then as well. You're looking at the league on one side, you're looking at beating Kerry and Killarney, first defeat down there in many years, and then you're looking at, defeats to Cork, very lucky against Louth, hammered by Dublin. Do you know what I mean?
I'd say you'd rate it as probably a D, really, or maybe a C if you were being very generous. Yeah, just I'll go through all the games that they've had this year very quickly. Just you were kind of touching on them already. Lost to Roscommon in the first round in the kind of quarterfinal. Then beat Kerry, and that was a good victory, 5 points win. But, again, is there a case of peaking too early? Then just about had enough to keep a point ahead of Louth. Lost to Cork by, was it a 6 point lead they had, and they go ahead and lose by 3. Then they beat Galway, fair enough, good performance there, but Galway were unimpressive. I know Shane Walsh is probably getting an awful lot of vitriol over in the West at the moment, but in some ways, winning an All-Ireland for Kilmacud Crokes has potentially cost his county in All-Ireland. And that's been unbelievably harsh. He's been a brilliant player who's been very committed to Galway over the years, but he's just not himself. He definitely isn't. And obviously he wouldn't have wanted it to work out that way, but it kind of has worked out that way. So yeah, Mayo, I have to say I'm really disappointed, especially with how they finished off the game here. From the 57th minute onwards, they scored nothing. And from the 54th minute onward, they scored once, and that was a 45 from the goalkeeper. After that, they had one wide, which was a Killian O'Connor ball in, another wide from Durkin, a ball dropped short from Jordan Flynn when he was on the stretch. Hessian had a bit of a goal chance, and then Jack Carney fisted a ball wide that was lobbed into the area. They weren't really creating anything, and they were just getting picked off time after time. 217 to 11 points. It is going to retire a few players, isn't it? Surely, Kevin McStay, generally you see this with managers. When they buy themselves a little bit of time, it's usually by you having a few sacrificial lambs as well.
Yeah, I was looking at there was a I wouldn't say it was a great picture, but you're just looking at Pádraig O'Hora and Aidan O'Shea after the game, and just utter dejection all over their faces. People will be probably, the easy thing about O'Shea is to say, he's probably going to retire or should retire or whatever. As Trumspieler says here, Aidan O'Shea was unreal all year, deserves an All-Star. I don't disagree with that either. I think he was unbelievable all year. A disappointing day yesterday. I don't think he'll retire, and I don't think Kevin McStay would be forcing him out the door. I think there's other players maybe that are a bit more periphery. Killian O'Connor is obviously, Mayo's all-time score, highest score, and the highest score in the history of the championship. But he's kind of a bit par player at the moment, and as the injuries have just really, really hurt him over the last couple of years. There's no point in saying any different than the injuries that probably would have retired other players. So he's probably one that maybe may exit. Kevin McLaughlin again, probably not that he's not guaranteed his place or whatever, but he's kind of coming on in games. He started the game against Galway. He kind of starts certain games, maybe just comes on in others. Jason Doherty's another who's overcome massive injuries in the last couple of years, was probably not guaranteed his place anymore. But I would expect Aidan O'Shea to stay on, if I'm honest. If you look through, what was really good about Mayo this year, his fingerprints were over a hell of a lot of it, I would say. I would have to question the selection policy in the sense of Tommy Conroy. I know he's come back from the Crucian. That we started very few games this year. I'm not exactly sure what that is about, or whether they're easing him into it or whatever, but that's peculiar to me. It was great to have Ryan O'Donoghue back in some sort of form after a difficult season last year. But as regards to retirement, I expect Aidan O'Shea to stay on. The other three lads I mentioned, I'd say may exit. Because they're maybe a bit more periphery than they were maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I was sitting beside Michael Foley at the Sunday Times for the matches, and he'd kind of mentioned to me early doors about how long Colm Reap takes with any set piece. Any ball he has, it all takes all day. And I was like, yeah, it started to get in on me very quickly. He was taking forever with all the kickouts. I think he needs to become an awful lot quicker with them. Tom O'Keefe says, Shane, what's the point of the Tyrone retro jersey since they got beaten by Kerry? Well, it's probably a last opportunity to show it off for the year. So
the last dance.
Yeah. Delighted to say now we're joined by Drew Wylie of Monaghan and Ballybay. How are things, Drew? You might shift to one side there.
All right. How's things, man?
Not too bad at all. Your
other
other left.
You had a good weekend. You had a good weekend, Drew. I'd say you're still salty enough this morning. I'd say you look like a man that had a tough weekend celebrating.
No, I didn't go too mad now, but no, it was a great weekend. From Monaghan football, and we have a couple of good weekends to look forward to. I suppose even next weekend we have the All-Ireland final for the minors, so the county's on a bit of a buzz there at the minute, so it's great.
This is as exciting of a time as there's ever been in Monaghan football, realistically. All-Ireland semi-finals aren't exactly too plentiful. You have one of them in 2 weeks' time, and it's the first time the minors in a final since 1939 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, all right. Yeah, I've seen bits of articles about that for the minors, but no, and then not even that, even look back a couple of weeks ago, the Hurlers had a good win as well. So, it's great. It's great for the county, as I say. There's flags. There's plenty of flags up there at the minute, and there's a great buzz. But I suppose when you beat your neighbours, Armagh, it makes it that wee bit sweeter too, so.
Yeah, back in 2018, that was the last time that Monaghan were in an All-Ireland semi-final. You played that day. You scored a point that day. What's the buzz like being a Monaghan man togging out at Croke Park for an All-Ireland semi-final?
It's hard to. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to put into words. But they're the days they just strive for every, as a county footballer, they're the days you strive for and really want to perform in, yes, 2018, it probably haunts me a bit, and I'm sure it haunts a few of the lads that are currently there, and you want to maybe put a few wrongs right, but we come up short. We were a point out, lost by a point that day out, and hopefully, the next day against the Dubs, it's not going to be simple for the lads, but have no doubt they're gonna put something up to Dublin.
If I remember correctly, didn't Rory Beggan wind up for a late shot from about the 65 to try and hit an equaliser? Jeez, it was like it just went all the way to the wire that day.
Yeah, it was a game. Yeah, there was no doubt about it. I was actually talking to some of the Ryan Porter last week actually, and we were just chatting about it. We had felt we had got a grip of the game halfway through the second half, and then Tyrone just bounced with a goal, and it just took the whole momentum out of it. But we grinded ourselves back into it, and I do mind Rory Beggan. He actually got a shot. Well, not sure it was a shot or what it was, but it ended up on top of Kieran Hughes, and maybe we felt we should have got something on the end of it, but can't be too critical of referees nowadays.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was in Croke Park. I'm sure you were there as well. Croke Park on Saturday, watching that penalty shootout. The game finished 14 apiece, and not everyone was loving what we saw during normal time. I'm sure it was really dramatic to watch as someone who with a vested interest through. But the penalty shootout, what was that like to watch? And I'd say you were relieved that Ryan wasn't taking part in it.
Yeah, I've actually seen Ryan take a few penalties now over the years, and I'd stick him up there, no problem. But I'm not sure. Obviously, you have to give great credit to the 10 players, both sides, that step up and take the penalty. You're in the spotlight. It's a carnival atmosphere in Croke Park. How do you set your mind to put the ball down and rattle the net? Not to do it once, but to do it twice. And then even for the likes of Gary Moan that missed his first penalty, I heard Vinny say, he's waiting around a long time to get the next penalty, and thankfully he stepped up and rattled it. But it's a hard way to lose a game. When you think about it, both teams went toe to toe, and at the end of the day, neither team really lost the thing. It was a penalty shootout that ultimately put Monaghan through.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I don't think, and Vinny said it after they won a penalty shootout. I don't think Monaghan won the game per se, but that's just that's just the way it is at the moment. I thought it was very interesting as well. Vinny said after he was asked, do Monaghan lads practice penalties, and he said no. And I'd say I'd say Kieran McGeeney's just scratching his head like after Armagh losing 3 penalty shootouts in a row. But Vinny made a really good point, and you kind of alluded to it there. He said it can kind of be counterproductive to practice them because there is no way to prepare for, as he described it, a sea of orange in the Davin stand and it's grand like practicing a few penalties and a few lads shouting at you, you know, that are in the squad or whatever. But there is probably nothing that could prepare you for that kind of that nerves or that nervous energy around it. And as well as that, you know, when you, as you mentioned, Gary Mohan there, missing a penalty, like to have to step up and take another one as well, nothing could really prepare you for that, could it?
No, that's exactly it. Like, you know, you go to the training field there and like, how do you mentally prepare yourself for the atmosphere, the crowd? You just mentioned it there, like the crowd, like, you know, the sea orange that was behind that goals, like, you know, seen Manzi maybe waving at them and Jack McCarron waving at them, you know, like, and that's part of the game. Like, you know, it's great to see that like them players weren't shying away from that atmosphere, and they were probably relishing it, like, you know, really wanting, and they were fantastic penalties. Like, you know, you couldn't, any one of them, I suppose, the one that was saved all right, but any outside of the other 9, like, you know, they were bottom corner or top, Manzi I think hit both corners, like, you know. But I've no doubt, like, I'm sure them lads maybe going through training session and maybe set a ball down and say, Rory, standing goals there type thing, like. But I wouldn't imagine there was like time set aside for, right lads, we're going to 10 lads are going to hit penalties here, you know. So I've no doubt them lads were practicing maybe behind the scenes or something, like, you know, pick a point in the nets away from the training field and you know, hitting a spot in the goals, like, you know.
Would you fancy stepping up yourself?
I'm not too sure. No, end off. Yes, no, I wouldn't have hit a penalty. But here, I still wouldn't. No.
I could just see, I said to someone before, I'd imagine like defenders, I'd say Julian Dix straight down the middle, burst the ball out through the net.
I've seen Darren Hughes hit a few there over the years, and I think he just pointed the middle of the lace high straight down the middle. So he's no fancy Dan putting it into the corners.
I would have thought though that practicing them would be a sensible option at this stage. I know you can't replicate the environment, but then like, why bother practicing freeze at training or anything like that? Like, it could happen. So like, and this is only, look, obviously this is like a Tipperary Cup soccer semi-final many moons ago, but we had a penalty shootout, and it was just unusual to go up and take one, because like this wasn't just like a complete mess of a game. You were trying to win, and it was unusual, a situation I wasn't familiar with. I ended up mishitting it, but it went into the top corner, clipped the underside across. You'd swear it was intentional, unbelievable.
I'm amazed you even admitted that you said you mishit it. I presume you just take it as, you know, brilliant strike. I
mean, I was going for that general direction, but like I was like that as I hit it. And because I hadn't been in that situation before, I had no routine or anything like that. I had to say I would like to have practiced a few, if I'm honest. But Callum Comiskey couldn't but feel sorry for him, Drew. I mean, what a tough spot.
Yeah, you mentioned their practices, but I've no doubt them, like the lads, like, you know, they talk about training, but on your nights off, like, I've no doubt them boys are taking a bag of balls and out practicing kicks or practicing free kicks, like, and as I say, I would say they're practicing penalties away from maybe the training field, putting the ball down and picking your spot in the net, like, you know, all top forwards do it, like, you know, they're out. I have no doubt Manzi's still practicing free kicks, still practicing penalties away from Monaghan training, and then possibly even in it. But it's really hard to replicate the scenario that the two lads, and I suppose the last couple of years, penalties have become a bigger thing in big matches. Like, you know, Armagh last year against Galway, like, you know, it's a defining moment, you know, winning and losing, and that's just it.
Can I ask you, as a player, how would you feel losing an All-Ireland quarter-final on penalties?
No, I don't think it's. I don't think it's a way of losing a game. I'm not, as I say, I'll take the Monaghan win at the weekend, but I wouldn't be in favour of it. I don't really agree with it. Like, you know.
Would you feel a bit shortchanged almost? We've trained for X, Y, and Z, and we're out of the championship, but we haven't really lost, or I haven't, you know, my man hasn't beaten me to score a point to win the game. If you get, do you know what I mean? And plus, like the five lads,
like I heard Vinny actually say afterwards, like, you know, neither Monaghan won the game nor Armagh lost the game. Like, and it's a fair statement. Like, you know, both teams ended the draw. You know, I know schedules are fairly tight at the minute and trying to get games in. Like, but I still feel another, like, it's an All-Ireland quarter final. Like, you're down to the last 8. I think another day out would probably settle all. Like, you know, but it's as I say, the schedule's so tight at the minute. It's probably hard to get games in. You know?
As a player, and I know that scores were not plentiful the other night, would you be more in favour of, you know, next score wins, like a golden score kind of job, or what would you think of that? Or could we be waiting half an hour for a score and would everyone just plant behind the ball? Or
we're not playing out in the backyard here now. You know, but no,
fly keepers.
The fly keeper, like, you know, we're going to make rules up here as we go along. But no, I think another day, as I said, I think it's fair on both teams. You'd love another day out for both teams to go at it again. Like, you know, as I say, I know you're saying scores weren't plentiful, but it was an intense game. Like, you know, it was entertaining. Well, I felt it was entertaining. Obviously, in Monaghan, you know, Monaghan probably felt from watching it. I felt a lot of control of the game for the last 20 minutes, and probably didn't just if they had got that 2 points up on Armagh, probably could have held it out, but you know, they didn't.
Do you know back in 2018, we'll say, when you were in the Super 8s and you're playing 3 matches in 4 weekends, or how much does that take out of the body, and how much of an impact would it have made from the 4 teams that didn't have that week off while the group winners did heading into last weekend? Yeah,
I suppose it works. Like, you know, you can look at it from Armagh's side of thing, and you can like they obviously had a week's rest and really prepare the body for it. And I think the 3 out of the teams that were rested did get through. Like, but momentum held with Monaghan. Like, but you know, when you're in that. When Monaghan got a good win there against Kildare, probably scraped it right at the end. Like, but you know that coming away from Tullamore, I've no doubt the lads were buzzing to get back to training on Tuesday night. Like, and once they heard Armagh, like, they probably said, right, we're going to have a crack at this. And at the end of the day, like, the reward was to get into an All-Ireland semi-final. Like, it can be testing on the body. You know, I've seen a lot of lads pulling up there against Monaghan or again in the Monaghan Armagh game, like, you know, but that was both sides. I actually seen Armagh players cramping and as many Monaghan players cramping. So we'll see. You're looking. I would say it would favour Monaghan going into the weekend. Like, you know, they had a bit of momentum going into Armagh. So.
What about Conor McManus though? He truly is the Monaghan goat at this stage.
Yeah, he's something else. You know, at the free kick, I was there, right, where's Manzi? I was just like, you know, we were all waiting. I've seen him over the years. I've seen him too many times looking for the ball, or like in them clutch moments, and he's the man that can pull it out, like, you know.
Yeah, do you know what I thought actually, Drew, when I was watching it? I was like, this is like a final set piece in the game, and because there was a little bit of a delay, Monaghan were checking with the referee, do we need to take a pot shot here from the 65 with maybe Rory begging, or can we try and work something? So they went out to the sideline. One of the players went out to the sideline, checked with Vinnie Corey. He was like, okay, well, I presume that's what was said. Okay, work the ball in. And I was like, you know, the end of a basketball game, Chicago Bulls, they're trying to make sure they get it to Michael Jordan or, you know, the different teams that LeBron was playing with. And you just knew as soon as he got the ball and you saw him cut across his man and end up with Grugan on him, you just knew it was going to be a free. And I'd say the only people with doubts in the stadium were people who weren't Conor McManus. You just felt he was going to pop it.
That was it. Like, you know, that he's been involved in, like, he's a big game player. Like, and he is one of the greatest Monaghan players for us. Like of his time, like, even Monaghan of all time. Like, you know, but you could see Shane Kerry, yes, he was making a run. I could see a lot of chats going on between him and Vinny, trying to see what was going on. But, you know, we was watching it and just, I say, right, let's get Manzi on it and see what we can make of it here. But thankfully he as I say, he never shies away from the big moment, and he went after it. And once the free was given, it was every I was 100% sure we'd be going to penalties.
Yeah, and I suppose then, like, I'm looking at the black card that Monaghan got, and it was for Sean Jones. Like, I don't think he intentionally tripped the Armagh player, and then also later on, Kieran Mackin definitely body collided with a Monaghan player, and he got away with it. So, but coming back to like the impact of the black card that Sean Jones got, and went into extra time, like 7 minutes of the first period of extra time. Armagh set off Monaghan and allowed Monaghan to just hold the ball. They didn't try and ram home that advantage, Drew.
Yeah, I have to say, at first, I thought Sean Jones was a black card. Just where I was sitting and the angle I looked at, it looked like he flicked the arm or his hand, like. But there was a crossover. There was a crossover of heels or something, and that was it. There was nothing in it. And then you look at obviously the Armagh, incident, and to get away with it. And that's probably the bit of frustration that maybe builds up with players, the inconsistency of maybe calls throughout a game. Like, but they're out of things like that are out of a player's control, and you can only deal with what's in front of you. But you're right in saying, like, Armagh, Monaghan, for the first 7 minutes of that extra time, like, they done really well. Like, Armagh got the first score, but they just stuck with it, and Monaghan probably held the ball and kept possession. And you're right in saying Armagh sat back, but maybe that's just the way they're used to playing all year. And if a man down, you should maybe be trying to make a cut at it, especially in that extra time. But it's easy for us to say, you have 10 minutes where you could win or lose a game, and maybe with Manzi, with the likes of Conor McManus inside, and Conor McCarthy floating about, like, you can't give these lads space, like, or maybe they run away with it. But that's maybe just the way Armagh have set up all year.
Just Drew, on Conor McManus for a second, you obviously marked him several times, I'm sure, with when Ballybay have played Clontibbret, and even with the county as well. When you're like, he was just so relaxed even for that final free, just total confidence in himself. What's it like to be a defender at the other end of the field, knowing that, if we get free anywhere inside the 45, I probably don't even need to look at the scoreboard half the time. I can just focus on my own job. I'd imagine that's what it's like. Yeah,
and that just doesn't come by accident either. Like, Conor McManus has been, right from a young age, it's been well documented. He's always practiced frees, like, and that just, as I say, you have to put the work in, and he has put the work in over the years to get that. But as a player at the opposite end of the field, having that reliance on a top forward that can keep you in the game, and it's a great asset to Monaghan football.
Can I just ask you as well, Drew? Like, I mentioned just before we brought you on, I was just saying, like, there's literally no end to Monaghan. There's literally no end. Like, this year, there's no point saying any different. There were probably other names that were touted for the job probably before Vinny got it. It was seen by many people that with the likes of yourself stepping away and the age profile, the likes of Connor and Carl O'Connell and a few more, and the transition of maybe players into retirement, and that it was going to be maybe a difficult couple of years. They were going to maybe struggle to retain Division 1 status. They've retained Division 1 status. They've got to an All-Ireland semi-final. Yeah. Like, what is it that you're just able to go that deep into the reserves and always find something? Like, you've been in amongst the camp for so long. Yeah. Like, what is it?
I would, as I say, there's no secret potion or anything. Like, it's just it's probably just the mindset of the players. Like, it's a strong group there. Like, and nobody ever wants to let each other down. Like, even when I stepped away myself, like, I'd done so many years with Monaghan football, like, but part of me was feeling that I was not letting players down, like, but obviously I had to think of myself too, like, but there's that what would you say, bond with the players. Like, nobody, like, you look at Carl O'Connell there, like, he's probably been Monaghan's most consistent player all year, like, and if he has another blinder in the All-Ireland semi-final, like, he's probably up for an All-Star, as I say, it's really hard to put a finger on it, but there's just that never say die attitude. And like, if all the years I was involved, I think we were tipped nearly every year to be relegated out of Division 1, like, you know, but we just, and it, you know, that's outside noise. You know, we wouldn't be, there's a lot of players, like, we wouldn't get caught up in the media maybe saying favouring different teams or whatnot, and you know, that does play a factor, and maybe it is talked about, like, you know, I know it has been talked about when I was there myself, you know, Monaghan's they're talking about us being relegated, like, you know, and we won't accept that, you know, we're just not happy to sit back and let somebody else walk over us, like, and that has been the mantra all, as I say, in my time, and I've no different it is there now, like, you know, Kildare had Monaghan on the ropes, but yet we still came back and bounced and got the winning score, like, you know, and there's just that, as I say, it's just that never say die attitude. Like, you know, there's not one man you couldn't see in that Monaghan team or panel that wouldn't give their arm and a leg for Monaghan football, like, you know, and that's just the culture that's in that squad, but not even the squad, probably even within the county, like, you know, as I say, you know, you look at the Monaghan minors there, like, you know, it's great that they're seeing what's going on, like, you know, in their senior setup as well, like, you know.
Hey, come here. I know I spoke to you earlier on the air. You found it kind of interesting enough, been able to talk honestly as a player outside of the box, as opposed to the stuff you used to say to us when you were a player.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Yeah. I suppose I haven't done that many articles of media, but no. Listen, when you're not, like, say, different articles of you when you're a player, like, you know, you would just copy and paste a lot of stuff that's been said, like, you know, if you look at any of the winning managers look at their articles or interviews, there are a lot of them's all overlapping, like, yes, work to do, we've a lot to learn, back to training Tuesday night, get ready for a tough semi-final and see where it goes, you know.
Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask you about Conor McCarthy. How big of a difference is it playing as a forward or a wing forward or corner forward that he would often play as over the years to moving to wing back? Because we were chatting about it, and I was kind of saying, well, I mean, teams move forward and back as one big unit of 15 in a way at times. So he's just probably a little bit more withdrawn and coming onto the ball. Like, how big of an adjustment would it be for Conor?
Yeah, like, I've not only ever, like, you know, I've played with Conor and against Conor with club level, like, you know, and he's always been, not always, like, but he's been he's been a centre forward or inside man, like, you know, and he's a dangerous man to mark, you know, he's so good, so skillful and everything, like, but he's probably, you know, this year he really has thrived at wing back, like, you know, and he, as I say, he's another man that's been so consistent with Monaghan football all year. Like, you know, another, as I say, he is up there probably all-star contender as well. Like, you know, he's been exceptional for Monaghan, and but it's probably the player himself. Like, you know, he probably had to adjust his mindset and where his positioning around the pitch. Like, you know, rather than maybe making 3 or 4 runs to look for a ball, he's maybe coming around onto a breaking ball and being able to kick it inside, like, you know, so that knowledge even of him playing out the field and the knowledge for himself of and in playing from inside, like, he probably knows the runs of players and being able to play the ball in, you know, so it probably has been a right adjustment for himself, but he's been exceptional for Monaghan there in the last couple of games, like, you know, what did he get the last, say, 3 points or something?
Detox 101 asks, could you ask Drew, what's the best football game you ever played in or ever saw? Interested to see what era those games were.
Well, I suppose the game for me that the best game I played was Kerry in 2018 in Clonus. It was just something else. I had, you know, with the Super 8s. It was I think Kerry had lost their first game and we had won our first game, so it was a do or die game for Kerry. It was the day Clifford broke our hearts and got a goal at the end. But, you know, the physicality, the intensity of that game was just something else. Like, and it's a game, you know, you still had the likes of Kieran Donaghy playing, Darren O'Sullivan, Sean O'Shea, David Clifford. You know, it was just unbelievable. I'm sure a few of you have experienced championship matches in Clonus, like, and the atmosphere was just phenomenal. Like, you know, it's probably a game that sticks with me.
It
Yeah.
shook that day, didn't it? Like Clonus was actually nearly shaking that day.
Oh, I'm telling you, the hairs are standing on my arm here, even just thinking of it, and I think Carl O'Connell, we got a breakaway score in the second half. I think Carl O'Connell got it, maybe passed into Manzi, and Carl O'Connell come off the run and kicked it over the bar. But I actually I thought the ground was shaking, how there was that big of a roar. Like, it was just, as I say, but they're the games, like, you can talk about, and you remember as a player, you look back and say, yeah, I was part of that. And, that ultimately as a player, like, as playing at the top level and competing against some of the best players in the country.
And how wise were you to David Clifford? Like, everyone had known what he'd done at minor level before that, but like, how well worn did you feel you were with him that day? And look at what he's got on to do.
It's unbelievable. He's an unbelievable player there at the minute. Like, his skill level and bounce the ball. Like, he we were aware of him and knew how dangerous he would be. Like, and I think I can't write back what he scored that day, but I thought we had him well enough wrapped up. But as I say, the bounce of the ball come right from at the end, and I honestly don't know how he managed to get the ball in by Darren Hughes that day. It just seemed to scrape in by the post or across him. But we were well aware of what damage but where he has come from then. Like, it's just phenomenal. Like,
Were you surprised to see the manner in which Kerry disposed of Tyrone there on Saturday, even with Clifford hitting 6 or 7 wides? Like, he's unbelievable, but that wasn't his day.
No, it wasn't his day. There was a lot of people talking about David Clifford, like, but I would have said, was it Jim O'Connor midfield, and even the corner back as well at number 2, is it?
Graham O'Sullivan, was it?
Yeah, it was unbelievable, the skill level. That it didn't come as a surprise, like, because it really felt if Kerry get all together here and they'll blow Tyrone away, like, and they ultimately did do that. Like, don't even think Tyrone. What was it? They were 10 or 15 minutes into the second half before they got a score. Like,
Yeah, I think it was 25 minutes all told without a score, which you just wouldn't have predicted beforehand.
Like, you have to look at even Kerry's bench that came off Kerry's bench, that the 5 players that took on. Like, they really. But that's a team looking to win another All Ireland, and you have players there really competing for places. But here it can be easy too when you're 7 or 8 points up. The spaces will open up in Croke Park, and it can be that wee bit easier to get scores or whatnot.
Who do you see as the favourite for the All Ireland at the moment, Drew? Take your Farney colours off for a second now.
You'd probably say Kerry at the minute, but say Kerry. But then you've seen a lot of Kerry Dublin finals over the years, and how if it is to come to that, like, but there's a lot of football. There's 2 games we played yet, and I wouldn't rule anything out. What happens?
It sounds like you boys are going to build up a bit of a siege mentality anyway. I can see it in you already.
Yeah, I'm trying not to speak as a player here, but no, like, don't get me wrong. Like, Monaghan are going to have to be a lot better the next day out against Dublin. Like, you look at that Dublin team, and the spine of the team have like, you look at Davy Bourne, John Small, McCarthy, Fenton, Conor Callan, Paul Mannion. Like, there's 10 or 12 players there that have been around so long. Like, and
yeah, I was just going to say there, as you mentioned, the long spells where Tyrone didn't score in the game. Like, from the 21st minute to the 57th minute, Tyrone didn't score from play. They got a couple of frees during that period. And I couldn't believe that they took off Rory Canavan, one of the few forwards that was actually scoring from play. And fair enough, things were going wrong. Maybe they wanted a system change or whatever. But Drew, taking off someone who's actually scoring, I just found that a bit unusual.
Yeah, funny. I thought it was strange myself when I seen him going off. But we're not standing on the sideline. We're not maybe seeing what they're trying to do, or maybe something they've worked on to make the change. Like, but Rory and Dara Canavan, like, the skill level of them 2 players, like, there's something. It's probably fearful for a few full back lines in years to come. Like, and but as I say, that's the manager's decision at the end of the day, and you just have to stand by it.
Quick question for you there, Drew. Detox
Yeah.
101 says, if Monaghan got Dublin and Clonus, does he think they would beat them?
I think we've beat them. We've got enough record there in Clonus with them, but I don't think we've beat them in championship yet. We've beat them in a couple of league matches, all right. But here, don't rule anything out. Like, but as I say, Monaghan have a bit of improvement to do. But do you know that the game plan will be probably completely different than the Armagh game. Like, you know, the way the opposition, the way Armagh set up, and the way Dublin set up. You know, I've no doubt Monaghan will be able to adapt themselves to be able to get something out of it. Like, you know.
I saw Pat Nolan tweeting it's be the first meeting of Dublin and Monaghan in an All-Ireland semi-final since 1922, which was on the exact same day. So it's going to be, 100 plus years. And that semi-final in the 1922 semi-final was played July 15, 1923, because there was a whole load of messing back in those days, War of Independence, so on and so forth. So it'll actually be 100 years to the day since their last All-Ireland semi-final.
Who came out the right side of that? Or?
Dublin.
You're going to rewrite history, Drew, hopefully.
We'll rewrite history. Hey, you know, like, from my own experience, like, over the years, like, we never feared Dublin, like, you know, regardless. I know people are probably laugh, like, you know, but come league football, we actually, like, every time we played Dublin in a league match, I felt we could beat them, like, you know. And it was just trying to bring that then into championship. And I think was it 2014 or 15 to beat us, maybe 14 points in Croke Park in an All-Ireland quarter final. But we were only after the same probably scenario. We were after coming off after beating Kildare, and then 6 days later we were playing the Dubs, like, and they just railroaded us. It was 14 points, like. But as I say, Monaghan have a couple of weeks, 2 weeks now to prepare themselves, and I have no doubt Vinny has something up his sleeve to curb the Dublin attack.
Drew, can I ask you about Derry? Because, like, you know, you're part of the Monaghan setup last year when they beat you in the Ulster semi-final. You've seen the rise of them the last couple of years, obviously under Rory Gallagher before Kieran Meena now has taken over after Gallagher stepped away. Like, could you talk to me about the dramatic change in them in the last couple of seasons?
Yeah, we actually played. I remember we played Derry in a challenge match. It was the first year that Rory Gallagher had taken over, and you know, from looking back from that challenge match to now, you could see what he was trying to do, like, you know, and the difference then players have made from that. As I say, I'm thinking back, it was 2020 maybe or 2021 whenever Rory first took over, like, but it's about running the game. It's about a real running game, being defensive, and you know, the strides they've taken. But also individually, there's a lot of players there have really excelled in the last couple of years. Like, you know, you look at Conor Glass, Shane McGuigan, Brendan Rodgers. You know, they're top drawer players. Like, but every team has it, and that's if you want to be successful, there has to be a few individuals that are exceeding their limits. You know.
And I have to say, like, when I was watching Cork's performance, they struggled once they got up to the top end of the pitch. They weren't really able to break Derry down. And maybe, and I hate saying this, but maybe Cork didn't sit deep enough then when they were, you know, being attacked at the other end. But Cork did a lot right, because for long spells, Brendan Rodgers wasn't in the game. Shane McGuigan never scored from play. Conor Glass, I know they highlighted in the Sunday game some of the things he did, but it's not like he totally dominated the game. Niall Loughlin, you know, they did an awful lot right, Cork. It's just maybe they don't have the experience at this stage of the season.
Yeah, funny. I didn't get to see the second half of that game. I seen most of the first half, and I thought Cork were doing a lot right, like, you know, but they probably they broke at pace, but it was just maybe their turnovers. They give the ball away, cough the ball up a couple of times very easy, like, and against Derry, you really can't do that. Like, possession is crucial. Like, but I fancied Derry to beat them. I thought Cork would give them a bit of a game, and they did do. But ultimately, like, you know, where Cork, you know, they've turned the season around there in the last two games, like, where they're going to be experienced enough to be able to come up to Croke Park and you know, I've no doubt they weren't just coming up to take part in the All-Ireland quarter-final, like, but it was probably further than what maybe they expected they were going to get, like, you know.
Do you think Derry will give Kerry a right rattle?
I think they will. Do you know, remember a couple of years, was it last, was it 2021 where Tyrone bet Kerry in the All-Ireland semi-final, was it? You know, everyone was talking about, in the build-up to it, everyone was talking about David Clifford and how good he can be, and, you know, he ended up picking up an injury and going off before full-time. Was it full-time or extra time he had to go off? You know, so, you know, something like that could happen, and, you know, you're out your star player, and is there other players there ready to step up? I'm sure there is, but as I say, there's a lot on the line. You know, people have no doubt over the next 10 days, people are all going to be talking about a Dublin-Kerry final. And as a player, no matter how much you see that as a distraction, it's hard not to let part of it in. Like, you know, you're going to training, you're 3 nights a week, and you have a manager telling you that don't get caught up in that media, or don't get caught up in that Dublin-Kerry bullshit, or sorry, but
no, you're all right.
And you know, yes, like the players are experienced enough not to get involved in it, but, you know, some part of it might creep in, and maybe there could be a slight kink in the armour there for Kerry or for Derry to attack, and I wouldn't rule anything out. Like, you know, as I say, Brendan Rodgers, you know, as I say, there's a lot of good players. Conor Doherty in that Derry team, like, the Kerry's going to have to look about too, and likewise for Derry on Kerry, like, you know.
Interesting as well. Clifford went to town in the minor final a couple of years ago. I think he was marking Conor McCluskey, and he's probably waited a few years for revenge, and he'll get a shot at revenge the next day, which will definitely be really interesting.
I was at that game too, and I just remember Clifford, and it was just unbelievable. I remember remarking the skill level and whatnot. But yeah, you're right in saying Conor Doherty, but he's a real good attacking player as well, and even Ethan Doherty as well. Like, you know, the strong players there in the Derry squad. Like, you know.
And speaking of attacking defenders, Rory Maguire came up and got a great goal for Cork yesterday, and it looks like he's wearing a micro hurling glove there.
It definitely is. Yeah, it definitely is. I love the fact that he kissed the crowd against Derry of all teams. 30 years on from probably doing something similar.
Club hurling match maybe that evening or something. You wouldn't know. You know, and you know, people might laugh at that, and you'll see, but you know, that's part of the game. It's great to see it. Like, you know, I know if I seen me corner forward fucking blowing kisses to a crowd, I'd be asking myself questions here. What's going on?
I'd say you'd be trying to put him into the crowd.
You'd be biting your lip, you know. But you know, he's probably he's a young lad. You know, he's probably up to Croke Park and mad to give it a rattle, like, and enjoying the buzz. You know.
Do you know? I remember. Was it Tommy Bowe wore a hurling glove playing for the Lions? I think he'd broken his hand, and then 3 weeks later he was back playing. And he had the hurling glove on. So it can only be a hand injury is the reason that he's wearing that.
It must be so. I remember Tommy Bowe, actually, it was out in Australia, wasn't it? And he wore a hurling glove, like, so it must have been a hand injury of some description. But I'm sure if there was a bone broke, there was no way he wasn't missing an All-Ireland quarter-final in Croke Park. Like, you know, you'd be doing if he was anything like myself, I'd be doing whatever you can to play.
Yeah, and like, so where do you think Derry could hurt Kerry the most? And like, people always say, oh, now that David Moran is gone, midfield is a big area, and obviously we know how strong Derry are there. But Drew, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I was actually looking forward to the Dublin or the Kerry Tyrone game, because as in a midfield battle, I seen like, you know, Tyrone's midfielders, Kilpatrick and Kennedy, like, you know, they're so athletic and so big, strong, big players, like, but. And there was probably question marks over the Kerry midfield, over the like, not just, there was parts that they were looking, maybe I heard rumours they were talking about trying to get David Moran back and different bits and pieces, you know, but it just, as I say, Kerry just railroaded that, you know, and just Kilpatrick, I seen a couple of times he looked like he was chasing back, and it was Kerry had the upper hand on that midfield, like, you know, but where can Derry get at them? Derry are going to show, you've seen them, they're well documented as a defensive team. Like, they're probably going to frustrate the life of Kerry, and they probably won't get the same room they did do, which Tyrone done early on. Like, look at any of Kerry's early shots or scores, they were from distance, and Tyrone frustrated Kerry enough. But as I say, as the game opened up, Kerry just started the quick hand passing and started to move themselves through it. So, but it's how disciplined can Derry be, and they are a disciplined team to be able to. I think they will frustrate Kerry but can they do it for 70 minutes?
Have you ever seen Tyrone as off colour in terms of, like, you'd normally think they'd be looking to get under Kerry's skin. They weren't able to seem to do it, and the amount of times that they went running up the field, isolated, and just turning the ball over, like you're looking on from the crowd 2 or 3 seconds out going, they're about to turn the ball over here because we've a lad running into traffic and he's got no support. It just seemed very un-Tyrone-like. It
did seem very un-Tyrone-like, but, say from, you look back at the Tyrone, when Tyrone played Kerry in 2021, but I think Kerry probably come with a different mindset. How some of the movement of the players, and it wasn't just the inside line, like, all over the pitch, they were just relentless running. It was Tom O'Sullivan coming forward. It was Paul Murphy making hard runs, like, and they were defenders, like. And then you look forward and you see Paddy Clifford, you see Meyler hanging out of Paddy Clifford. But the easy option to do for Clifford would be just, I'm not making these runs, like. But he never stopped the whole game, and that's probably, as I say, each of them players probably had a few questions to answer against Tyrone, and they said, right, well, it's not happening today. And but as I say, I just felt Kerry, their pace all over the pitch. As I said, it wasn't the movement inside, it was just all over. There was always options for a Kerry man to run into space. I was watching even Paul Geaney, like, he's probably in the older end of the stick, like, but he some of his movement inside was as I say, there were McNamee was trying to get close to him, like, but I'm sure as a defender, like, when you have a forward moving constantly, like, it's just so maddening, like, and you don't get a break, like, and that's where the weakness, that's where maybe that couple of seconds or that split second where you can get a score off,
And Drew, Kerry's mindset seems to have changed in the sense that, we know they love, like, flowing kick passing and scoring and that kind of thing. They seem to be literally getting as much enjoyment out of a turnover as a score these days. And even the jaw and after a turnover, like, that was, it's a complete change of mindset, isn't it?
Well, probably would Paddy Tally have something to say about that? A Tyrone man. You look over the years, any of the Tyrone teams, or even Armagh, even Monaghan there, and when you get a big turnover in defence, and like, how lifting that, like, these turnovers where you get three defenders round a forward and he's on the ground and he can go nowhere and he's blue for over carrying, and referees would be mad to blow that free, and it can lift, like, when a crowd can really get behind that, it can be really uplifting for a team. It's as good as a score, like, and then you go up the field and if you get a quick attack and get a score, like, it can be demoralising for a forward that's maybe after giving that ball away. And but you're right, I would say maybe Paddy Tally has something to do with the Kerry defenders and celebrating the small wins around the pitch.
It was one of those weekends where we got a couple of brilliant goals that involved dummy solos, and you talk about things being maddening as a defender, Drew. Conor Doherty doing that to a defender, then slotting in the corner, and Sean O'Shea doing a little dummy solo, which was class. Defenders on the ground, and he's slotting it into the back of the net. I mean, what a skill it is. How infuriating if you're the defender on the ground.
Oh, it's just, sending some, there's no doubt about it. I don't think it was ever dummied in my life, but but no, you're right, like, but I actually seen it a couple of weeks back, or maybe about Kerry's goals and how they can create space, or that give them that split second by using that bounce. And but as a skill, that's a serious skill to have as well as a forward, like, to have that composure. Things get, I know myself, like, I've seen myself in club football there, and I get inside the square, and I'm just like, right, stick the boot through it here and hope it hits the net. You know, but as you said there, rightly so, there was a couple of great goals there at the weekend where players were so composed on the ball and able to take the dummy solo or take the bounce, like, you know, and kick the goal. Like, but even then, was it Dara Canavan's point?
Yeah.
Well, fuck, geez.
Rory Canavan.
You know, and you know, but that's, as I say, to have that, you know, and that's just pure natural skill, like, you know, and that's just, it's either in you or it's not, like, you know, and you know, but it's something that it's, when you have it in the locker, why not use it?
I'd say, Drew, to be fair, if you've never been caught with a dummy in your life, it was probably the time to go out before it did happen.
I'd be telling a lie there if I said it wasn't. I've been caught with plenty of dummies.
Well, I thought it was a bit tongue-in-cheek now, to be honest with you.
You believe me saying that, but no, and I don't even think I'd be able to give a dummy, to be honest with you.
And Drew, a question I wanted to ask you as well is, we often ask current players about who's the toughest man to mark and all this, and actually Sean Finn wouldn't even give us an answer not so long ago, because I think he doesn't want to give an edge to anyone who's up against Limerick. But now that you're retired from intercounty level, who's the toughest man to mark in opposition?
Drew, I asked you this before and you gave me 20 names, so you're going to have to keep it to 3.
No,
because you got the sticky wicket a lot of times. There's no point in saying any different.
Well, I did and I didn't, like, you know, but like, as I say, when the Monaghan team I was playing in, like, you know, you had so many, like, we'd real good defenders throughout the years, and there was one of us that had to take one of the marquee men. But over the years, like, I would have marked, like, Vinnie Curry was involved with this squad with me, like, you know, and even Colin Walsh and Kieran Duffy and even my brother Ryan, like, you know, there was 4 of us there, like, and we could have been named with any one of the players, like, but I get asked this question, like, you know, a few times, who's the toughest player, and it really is hard to, you know, I probably look back and at a tough day in an Ulster semi-final against Down. I think it's Conare Harrison, you call him, like,
yeah.
Giving me, you know, he probably scored, I don't know what he scored, maybe 3 or 4 points on me, like, but as a defender, you know, you don't like that, you know, it doesn't sit well with you. And obviously I've marked Michael Murphy. You know, it's just really hard to, you know, Murphy's an exceptional player. I remember marking him in a league match, like, and just, you know, he's an animal, like, you know, a real strong player, and really, really competitive, like, you know, for his team, and no different than myself, like, you know, we were all out to win, and but yeah, haven't really give you a name, have I?
I'm going to take Conare Harrison. I'm going
to say that. Yeah, you know, is that day took its own turn of events too. We were going to that All Ireland, or it was an Ulster semi-final, and we actually crashed the car. Ryan was driving. We crashed the car going to the game, so we did.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so we were going to the bus, going down to Monaghan, like, and just we slid into the ditch on the grass verge, and then, like, you know, just it was strange how it happened, but anyway, that's what happens. And then we went on and played the match. Actually, Owen Lennon, he was the selector at the time. He pulled up behind us and grabbed the bags, fucking threw the bags in his car, and away we went, like, you know. But
did you just leave the car there?
No, we rang our father, Ryan. Well, we say I was sitting in the front, I was sitting down, the car was sitting sideways, I was sitting against the door, like, and yeah, you know, so there was myself, Ryan, Thomas Kerr, and Desi Ward. Yeah, the 4 of us were in the car, and you know, I'm not, and I'm in no way using that as an excuse.
Jesus, no, Drew. Now, in fairness, some people would throw out fairly soft excuses. That's not the worst excuse in the world now.
But no, thankfully, none of us were hurt. The car took a wee bit of a hit, all right. But we rang my father, and he come then, and I think it actually just, not only that, it was the main road heading. We were playing in Armagh, and a lot of the traffic was probably heading by where the car was crashed, like, and my father and older brother were there trying to pull the car out, like, and it was by a local farmer next door, and then the guards were coming saying stop, and I think it was a mess. But anyway, that's it.
You weren't hurt or anything like that. It just
We weren't hurt. No. As I say, it was just we sort of slid into a grass verge, and then that was that.
What was your head like after that, Drew? If you don't mind me asking, are you thinking of, geez, I'm after having a lucky escape there? Are you finding it hard to concentrate on the game even after that?
No, not really. I know. Do we? As I said, there wasn't anything. We weren't going at no high speed or anything. We just slid into the grass verge, and went down into like a water drain or whatever, and we were just sitting sideways in the hedge, like, So, but it obviously for Ryan, he was driving it, and then for him to go and try play a match, like, it was, yourself, like, it's just not simple. But as I say, I wouldn't we went into the down to the hotel, and like just going on as if nothing had happened, like, But and I say that, I don't say that lightly, as in just going on, but that probably sums up. I'm not just taking. That's probably the Monaghan way. Like, I have no doubt there's a lot of players in the Monaghan squad just get up and go on with it, like, And but it was after losing the game, and then to come back to a crash car, it wasn't simple.
Well, Drew, look, you've been brilliant with your time. Really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, no bother, man. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Drew.
Yeah, that was great stuff. Jeez, what a yarn that is.
That was mad. Yeah, it's funny. He just said that's the Monaghan way. Just get on with it. That's kind of does sum them up pretty well, to be fair. Yeah,
they obviously made a bit of a deal about it on the Sunday game last night. The pass that David Clifford gave, just kind of blindly to Tyrone men coming to him, and he just blasted it up the field to his teammate, and obviously they went on and scored from there, the Sean O'Shea goal. Yeah, that was pretty brilliant. There's been some great kick passes over the years that have been, very exceptional. We're kind of being fed an awful lot of these hand passes across the goals for palmed goals, but there has been some brilliant kick passes over the years.
Now, to be fair, I didn't mind the Dublin palm goal yesterday, because I thought it was just so fast and quick, and I think when it's done like that, it actually looks fine and looks well. But Clifford's kick pass is outrageous. He probably didn't have time to take the ball into his hands, realistically, and to get the ball from his hands to his left foot as quickly as he did. And it wasn't a blind pass either. He knew right well that there was a man inside. It was an outrageous pass. Kind of thinking about other great passes. Probably Dermot Conley in 2019 against Kerry into Kilkenny for a brilliant point. Even though some say he wasn't aiming for Kilkenny, he was aiming for a teammate close by. Gooch's ball to separate the Dublin defence in 2013 in that semi-final is probably another one. I'd love to get the viewers' thoughts on other great kind of passes into the goals. I'd have to say Liam Connor's pass for Seamus Darby in 82, whether it was a pass or not, or otherwise it ended up in the breadbasket for Seamus Darby and in the back of the net anyway. So we'll take it as a pass. But I'd love to hear any more of the best passes or best assists in GAA history. Imagine to say if there was a fantasy football and you were getting like Gaelic football and it was assists, that Clifford actually wouldn't get the assist, even though it was the assist really.
Yeah, Richard Hogan says it here. Gooch for the Donegal Walsh goal. So he passed it into James O'Donoghue, and he flicked it on for Donegal Walsh to score, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I was like that was like threaded the ball through the defence and totally split the defence. Same with Clifford. You literally split the defence. The whole game opened off one pass, and there's nothing like it.
Yeah, what I'd say about that Gooch, when I was in Croke Park that day, and it was brilliant. Like, and it was very, the way people often talk about a player being a bit like a quarterback or whatever. Like, normally when a quarterback is throwing a ball, they take a couple of steps, like it's called the step back. When you take those couple of you backpedal a little bit. He did that step back and then kind of moved himself forward into the kick. And that's why I thought that was the quintessential quarterback type moment for a footballer. So that's why I thought it was so class. Joe Canning to Joseph Cooney from a sideline a few years ago.
Oh yeah, into his path. Like that was about was like 60 or 70 yards into his path nearly. Cooney made that run. That was in the Leinster final, COVID Leinster final against Kilkenny, I think, was it? I think it might have been.
I can't remember, but myself and Nisha Waldron tried to do a copycats of it actually.
You did actually, yeah, unsuccessfully.
Well, no, I mean, he hit, like, Nisha's very good at sidelines. He hit one and I caught it and then missed from about 21 yards out.
Wide, yeah. Is there anything worse than an unbelievable assist and then the final product isn't as it's supposed to be? It's not as advertised.
Yeah. We wanted to talk a bit of hurling. Of course, we always want to talk a little bit of hurling. And so we wanted to do our top 5 hurlers in the game at the moment. At the start of the year, we did a top 5. So this was before even the league started. And what do you think the 5 was from memory?
I would say there was probably 3 Limerick, Whelan, Hegarty. I'm not sure who the third one was. Tony Kelly would have been in there. It was Limerick stacked, I think. It could have been 4 Limerick, actually, and 1 Clare. Am I right? Is that ish?
That is 100% on the money. So on the bottom right-hand corner there, that's the top 5 before the 2023 season started. We had Grode Hegarty in at number 1, Aaron Gallan 2, Dermot Burns 3, Kyle Hayes 4, Tony Kelly 5. So anyone who says we wrote off Limerick or any of that old nonsense, everyone wrote it off.
Yeah. Just a good one in from Adrian McGath. The Carl Lacey crossfield ball to Michael Murphy for that goal at the start of the 2012 final. Definitely worth a mention there as regards assists. No, we'd 4 Limerick players in there, and like by all accounts, Gallan was not on the Limerick squad at the start of the year, and we still had him in the top 5. Just off the top of my head, like players, like who's going to come out of that top 5? Like Hegarty has had a very quiet year by his standards. I still think he's going to thunder into it, and I think he could easily be a man of the match in one or both of their next 2 games. If they win the semi-final, potentially in the final as well. But he definitely has to come down the pecking order, I would say.
Yeah.
Gallan probably might nearly have to go up to the top of the tree as regard other players that come into the mix. Conor Whelan would have to come into the mix based on his form this year. Is there any other Limerick player, Shano, that stood up or stepped up or kind of come into the reckoning as well?
Well, first off, I remember not so long ago somebody making a comment on one of our shows about how I was regularly touting Conor Whelan for top 10 and stuff like that, and that his form hadn't been great. But just the last 2 games have sort of reminded us how good he is. Richard Hogan here is saying Hugh Lawler. Like he's been having, and actually one of the few players that does seem to be able to regularly tie down Conor Whelan is Hugh Lawler.
And Aaron Gallan.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
So, and we might see that matchup again over the course of the year.
Blind spot to Tom Morrissey, surely, based on this year's form and even the form since 2018. He's probably very close to being in the reckoning for top 5, and he's definitely in the hurler of the year conversation as well.
Yeah, he was my hurler of the year in 2020. I know Grode Hegarty got it, and very good as well. I mean, it was toss of a coin, but for me, it was Tom Morrissey. Then he always delivers. Yeah, so I think Tom Morrissey is going to have to be in there, and certainly, as things have stood lately, he would be ahead of Conor or Grode Hegarty in the pecking order here.
Yeah, and do you know what impresses me kind of most about Tom Morrissey is that when other players weren't going well this year, he was still trucking away and scoring 3 points. Yeah, that's the player you want, though, isn't it? Like that is like he's like we've heard Niall Moore talking about him, his club mate, and he just says. He told me kind of just saying before, like whatever you see him doing at county level, what he does at club level, he says he's the quintessential club man and always delivers at club level with 2 or 3 lads hanging out with him most of the time. So if you're talking about guys that maybe have to come into the mix, I'd say he probably comes into the mix.
Adrian McGrath says if Donovan, and I presume you mean Darrow Donovan, isn't in this, the 2 you need to put away the mics.
I would say Darrow Donovan is heavily, and we did mention him really the other day, but thinking about it in hindsight, I'd say he's a nailed-on all-star, barring he has like a 5 out of 10 in a semi-final, and I think he's probably an outsider to be in the hurler of the year conversation if Limerick are to win, because he has, like, he was 3 points against Cork. His deliveries into the forward line so good. He forages so hard as well. Again, when a lot of other guys haven't been delivered to a high level, he's been phenomenal. The thing about this is now, Shano, how much of this are we placing on now, the here and now, and what we've seen in the championship so far this year, and how much of it are we placing on what we've seen particularly with the Limerick players in the last 5 years?
There's a bit of both going on. There always is. Like we've Keane Lynch out of the list there, but if he's fully fit, he's number 1. You know, and like the other thing about Darragh O'Donovan is, like, I picked him as my All-Star in 2018. You know, where were you back then, Adrian McGrath, when I was calling him an All-Star back
Where
then?
were you? This is like Father Ted Golden Cleric speech, like.
Yeah. Okay, right. Let's go through the Limerick team and see if there's anyone else we're missing. So Nicky Quaid, obviously very, very valuable player, right up at the top end of the goalkeepers. Dan Morrissey is someone who's been mentioned. I think Barry Nash, now that he's been pushed up on a little bit, he's finding it more difficult to impact games the way he normally would, even though he's still excellent. Will O'Donoghue, very valuable player. Kyle Hayes. Declan Hannon, he's had a lot of injuries lately. Diarmaid Burns is right up there. Tom Morrissey. Like, there's an awful lot of lads you could look at there. Is there anyone from Clare? So Tony Kelly's going to remain in the conversation, of course. I think Ryan Taylor, even though we keep talking about how underrated he is, I still feel he's slightly underrated. In this top five, probably not.
He's tailed off a small bit now.
Taylor has tailed off.
I think he has tailed off a small bit. I think his confidence is down a small bit.
Shane O'Donnell
would definitely have to come into the conversation. Yeah, he's only played about 40 minutes against Dublin, and he absolutely lit it up. Yeah, I think he has to be heavily in the conversation as well. Thing as well, like, probably not going to have as many Limerick players in the top five. Maybe two.
Because teams have pushed them all the way these days. So it isn't like a couple of years ago, and even at the start of the season, when you feel like these lads are almost unbeatable. It doesn't feel quite like that, even though they could go on and win the All-Ireland. And I think you and I would both, far from writing them off, both say that they're our favourites for the All-Ireland this year. But they're not disposing of teams the way they did previously. How many tip lads are in the conversation here? Don't even answer. Don't even answer. And is there anyone from Galway outside of Conor Whelan in the conversation?
I think Joseph Cooney's been brilliant this year. I don't think he's in the top five. Colin Mannion had serious sway in the last day. Dottie Burke, obviously, we both rate really, really highly. I don't think he's as influential in a way at centre back as he is at full back, and I wouldn't be a bit like. Would you be that surprised to see him ended up at the edge of the square against Limerick on Sunday as well? Just as an aside.
I wouldn't be totally surprised, and you're talking about it against Aaron Gillan, of course.
Yeah, and I know he had a tough time last year, but he did get, he got to grips with him eventually. I'm not sure if they'll have Gerard McInerney at 3, given his struggles I'm not sure, just given his struggles in the second half the last day against Tip, I would say as well. And the goal obviously came off him as well. I think he was hooked for the goal, and the ball ended up in the back of the net after. But that's an interesting one. But I don't know if Dottie Burke's as influential at 6 as he is at 3, if you get me. I think he's nearly more important at 3, but he's obviously 4 or 5 All-Stars now at this stage. He's obviously in the conversation, as is Pádraig Mannion. Whelan would probably be the only one that would actually be in the 5, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd agree on that front. And actually, I just wonder again about Galway's experience against Limerick last year when they tried Cathal Mannion sweeping in front of that area where the right corner forward position that Gillan always drifts into. It didn't work early on. They still managed to arrow some unbelievable balls into that spot for Gillan to score. And then when they pushed up the likes of Mannion and so on, they had a bit more joy. So actually, that makes it a very intriguing game from that point of view. And I wonder who Darren Morrissey will pick up. Like in the past, he's done well on lads who were good in the air. Remember him catching a ball over TJ there a couple of years ago. But maybe TJ was early in the season when he wasn't fully right and he'd had some sort of an operation. But anyway,
you mentioned TJ Reid heavily in the Hurler of the Year conversation the other day. Like, and I know we're kind of maybe looking at it from the point of view of, he's 36 in November or whatever. Should he still be in this conversation? But he's still as influential. Yeah, Patrick as well. Like, still as influential as ever. Like, if Kilkenny are going to win the All Ireland, TJ Reid is going to be nominated for Hurler of the Year. Is it fair in saying? Yeah, no, it is fair to say. Does it still make him one of the top 5 in the country? Like Owen Cody, is he higher in the conversation here, Adrian Mullen? Not for me now, being honest with you. I'll put you this way, and I'm going to change this a tiny bit. If we were putting in the 5 most influential players in the game, is TJ Reid in that?
I mean, what does that mean?
No, do you get me? Like, as in the influence he brings, like how influential is he to Kilkenny? That's not to say, but is he one of the best players in the country still? If you get me, do you know what I mean?
I mean, he is still one of the best players in the country. Like, but in top 5, okay. Look, at some stage we have to make a name of this team here, right? So, number 1, are we looking at Aaron Gillan?
I think we are. Think we are. Like, if he was, there's that some spelling of Aaron Gillan. If we were, like, if we had him too at the start of the season, and like his form, his graph is only getting higher and higher, and just you're thinking of, like, we're looking at it, what, 6 days out, and we're thinking of, like, Galway have to plan for him nearly above anybody else. He's at the top of his game at the moment.
Yeah, and so I'm pretty happy to put him at number 1. Tony Kelly, number 2, or Dermot Burns.
On popular opinion, I actually don't think Tony Kelly played that well against Dublin.
Yeah, do you know what? Paddy Doyle won plenty of ball. When it was 50-50 ball, I think Paddy Doyle did fairly well. In terms of getting on the breaks, like, if
he
Tony
was that walk through, and we both rate Tony Kelly unbelievably highly, and we've had him in the, in the top 2, 3, 4, 5 of this conversation since it started. I just don't actually think he's playing as well this year as he was last year. And I saw Derek Lynch put out a tweet after the quarter-final saying, like, surely after 3-4 today, Tony Kelly is nailed on for another All-Star. What would it be? Would it be his 5th? Become the most successful Clare player in the history of the All-Stars. I actually don't think he's guaranteed an All-Star already. I think if he delivers a big semi-final display, he probably is. I don't think he's playing as well this year as last year, if I'm honest with you. So I would want him down the conversation a small bit.
Did Tony Kelly deliver in the Munster final this year, do you think?
No, I think it was not one of his better displays.
No, he's scored 4 from play at the same time. So
listen, this is the standards that we're judging him by, and I don't want the Clare paparazzi coming in against me.
The aren't touchy. They're not touchy.
The couple of 2 balls blocked down that were unusual. There was a couple of bad wides, a couple of balls dropped short. I don't think he was as influential in the Munster final as he was. It wasn't close to the year before, I'll put it to you that way. So, like, I don't think he's playing as well as last year. That's not to say that he won't deliver a massive display in the semi-final. He probably will.
And when Cork were beaten by Clare, he scored 2-4, 1-4 that from play, including that lovely little flicked finish for his goal. I think he's, like, so who would you put ahead of him? Would you put Shane O'Donnell ahead of him?
Within the top 5, they're probably, O'Donnell is probably playing better for me on the whole this year than Kelly is. But that's not to say that, just like, you have to. There's the legacy part of this as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but like, who scored a hat-trick in an All-Ireland final here?
Yeah. Okay.
Clare legacy.
I wouldn't have either of them at 2.
Right.
I wouldn't have either of the Clare lads at 2.
Can I just add in another thing about Shane O'Donnell? Last year, when they got stitched up by Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final, he was still unreal. You're
a gas man. When we talked about this last year, you said, yeah, but a lot of his points came when the game was over. So that is a fact. And people can go back through the show and check it out if they want. Well, anyone who's that big a loser to go and check through the old shows to try and catch me out. Do you know what? Actually, it'd be pretty funny if they could find it. Yeah, like, for me, I think probably, yeah, it's very difficult to know what way to go with this. Shane, is Hegarty going out of the top 5 at the moment? I think so, yeah. Okay, we're agreed on that. Kyle Hayes, Dermot Burns, Rod Hegarty's out. Is Tom Morrissey coming into the 5? Yeah, and I think Dermot Burns is staying high up in the 5. Dermot Burns had 2 man of the match displays in the Munster campaign. Now, unusually in the Munster final, I thought he carried ball into contact and spilled a couple of balls, which is really uncharacteristic. And the free or whatever at the end, he had that ball in his grasp and let it fall, and it never would have been any talk about free had he held on to it, which is strange. But I do think he's still heavily in the conversation. Now, I wouldn't have Morrissey that high, if I'm being honest with you. I probably have Morrissey at maybe 4, and probably would have Dermot Burns maybe at 2. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and make an executive decision. Is there Is there a play to be made for Hugh Lawler being Kilkenny's most influential player at the moment, their most important player at the moment?
Yeah, well, if Galway had to plan to keep their key forward away from him, that says it all, really. Like Conor Whelan operated in the half forward line just so Hugh Lawler wouldn't be anywhere near him.
Yeah, I think he's getting better and better. Is he more influential than TJ at the moment for Kilkenny? Some people are saying Adrian Mullen, and that's fine, but like he hasn't played very little this year. He missed the club final. He's missed a good few games with Kilkenny. He might feature in the semi-final. I don't think he can put him near the 5 at the moment. Conor Whelan has to come into this 5, Shane, somewhere as well.
Well, if Conor Whelan's in the 5, how can you leave out Hugh Lawler, the one player?
No, I totally agreed, yeah. Just bring it back up on screen there for a second.
So who's dropping out of the 5 then?
Is Tony Kelly a cert for the top 5?
Oh, we're in trouble now. We are in trouble now.
Just asking the question.
Well, you see, a lot of people would find it easy to leave out Tom Morrissey because he's not this sort of flashy, sexy player, even though like he just scores these points out of nowhere, quietly scores 4 or 5 points that they're not that flashy. He just, I don't know, whatever it is, he's just so economical. And it's easy to nearly forget about him, if you will, even though like we know he should be up here. So we're putting him in there. Like, is Diarmaid Burns in the like I have him at number 3 here because he's delivering in games where it matters, and he also does the fairly tasty stuff too. I don't think we can leave Tony Kelly out. So then it's a straight shootout between Hugh Lawler and Conor Whelan.
And if you put the two of them up against each other in a game, who do you think is going to come out on top? And historically, who has come out on top?
It's Hugh Lawler, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And that's mad to say, like, Conor Whelan is second favourite for Hurler of the Year. But that's maybe a forward vision. Look at what we're looking at there. We've only one defender. No, we've 2 defenders in the top 5, to be fair.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of balance to that. We're not getting the old rose-tinted glasses of whoever puts over the freezer, whoever is doing all the scoring. But are we, like, would you stand over that?
Well, like, right.
What's Kyle Hayes done to drop out of 5?
Well, he just hasn't been as dominant this season. He's still brilliant, and he could go to town in the semi-final and final and be back at, in the top 5 here. But, if we're going to bring 2 lads in, if we're going to bring in Lawler and Morrissey, 2 lads have to drop out.
Let's do 3 giant 5s.
I mean, like, what can we do, really?
We'll get absolutely slated for leaving Conor Whelan out.
We will, but like, if people have got an argument which suggests that he'd be ahead of any one of those 5, fair enough. But I'm not sure they will. Like Sean Finn, if he wasn't injured, he'd possibly be in this top 5 as well.
Yeah, Paul, just bring it up again there, Shano. Aaron Gillan, Tom Morrissey, Diarmaid Burns, Tony Kelly, Hugh Lawler. Yeah, it is a coin toss with Hugh Lawler and Conor Whelan, to be fair.
Yeah. Who's the best newcomers, says Porter. Grode O'Connor and Brian O'Mara of Tip. Yeah, they both have been excellent. Any other newcomers this year really stand out to you? I think at times Brian Roach was really good for Cork.
Yeah, I think at times Paddy Doyle is very good for Dublin as well. Newcomers, any newcomer with Limerick? Not really. You couldn't call Cotton O'Neill a newcomer. You couldn't really call Adam English a newcomer either. Other team, Cork.
Adam Hogan.
Yeah, Adam Hogan's been brilliant, to be fair. Yeah, he's been very, very good. Kilkenny, any newcomers with Kilkenny really? Generally, most of the same. Billy Drennan could still have a big play in the championship yet. Yeah,
probably not too many with Kilkenny just yet, but like as you say, it's still early enough in the season. Whelan has been mixed this year, says Adrian. Yeah, like he had been quiet earlier in the season. He was taken off against Kilkenny. We were talking about that his form wasn't massive. He'd done some of his scoring against Westmeath, but otherwise had been quiet going into the Leinster final. So, yeah, I think it's fair to have Hugh Lawler a little bit higher than him. Nyland, he's been there for about 5 seasons at this stage, actually.
Aaron Nyland, they might be talking about.
Yeah. Fitzgerald for Watford, yeah. And take your pick of which Fitzgerald you mean.
Patrick or Warwick, yeah. Two very, very good players. Yeah.
What about Mark Fitzgerald?
Yeah, brilliant, yeah. The 3 Fitzes, yeah. I think he's one of a decent cohort of Waterford lads that's gone to the States for the summer as well. And we were talking about the other day, all the Cork lads gone out. It seems like the whole Galway senior football panel has gone out to the States as well for the summer. They're going to make use of been knocked out of the championship early. Be interesting to see what after the weekend whether there's many more. I always find going to the GA website, going to the overseas transfers or overseas sanctioned area, you just see a lot of very, very interesting names popping up from time to time.
Yeah. If you got the call, would you tip out this summer? I know you, or I know you just had the baby there, but
I may have other commitments, Shano, and I don't think anyone would be calling me at this stage of the day.
You also wanted to talk about a message that we got into the OurGame account about Limerick now versus Kilkenny, the 2006 to 2019.
Yeah, no, there was a detailed breakdown sent through comparing basically Limerick's run from 18 to now with Kilkenny's from 06 to 09, the team that they're compared most to. I just want to fly down through. There was just went through all the teams that Kilkenny beat during that time. So Kilkenny beat from 06 to 09 to beat Wexford 4 times, Clare once, Cork twice, Offaly twice, Westmeath once, Dublin once, Tip once, Waterford twice, Limerick once, and Galway once. So, and then when you compare Limerick 18 to present, they have beaten they've beaten Carlow once, Cork 5 times, Waterford 5 times, Clare 4 times, Tip 4 times, Galway 3 times, and Kilkenny twice. Now, when you put it in the cold heart of day, Limerick's is definitely more impressive. Who they have beaten. The passages have been way more difficult. The championship is, you'd say, elongated a good bit more than it would have been then. It's not, there's not a natural passage through. There's a lot of hardship to get to the knockout stages. So I would definitely take that point on board. Now, I don't know. I still probably have the Kilkenny 06 to 09 team. When I think of, maybe it's just what you grow up with as well. When I think of the best players that even in 30 or 40 years, the best players that I think I've seen, a lot of them will be from that Kilkenny team. What you're not going to go with Kilkenny anyway because of the Tip kind of bias, but what would be when you're
you've got your Stockholm syndrome there, the Offaly Stockholm syndrome for Kilkenny.
Oh yeah, well, obviously, yeah, of course. But when you compare the two of them, do Limerick still have more to do to be on par with Kilkenny or potentially surpass them? And that includes over the coming weeks.
No, and I want both counties to lose every match they play. I'm able to recognise, quality, but, I don't really favour one county over the other. But I think Limerick have already done more than enough to match what that Limerick Kilkenny team did because of the quality teams they've been up against. They've been unbelievable up against it all the time. And that's why I think it's more impressive than Kilkenny sauntering through an absolute wasteland of a Leinster that it was for years, generally straight into a semi-final, and then come and meeting Munster teams that have knocked the heads off each other thereafter and just peaking for basically 2 games a year. Limerick have had to peak for so many games in a season. And they went through a few seasons there of absolutely mullering teams by all sorts of scorelines. Yeah. And now they've had to do it in incredibly tough circumstances. Teams have sort of cottoned on to them a little bit. They're starting to match them tactically, physically, whatever way you want to look at it. So I would say it's more impressive already, whether they complete this 4 in a row or not. And of course, I've lost Verney there at the crucial moment.
I have you back. No, I tell you what would be interesting is if we were to pick it, and we'll pick a combined 15 at some stage of the Limerick 06 to 09 or Kilkenny 06 to 09 and the Limerick to now. And that'd be interesting to see what the balance is there. But on paper, when you look at who Limerick have beaten, even they've played a fair whack of more games, actually, you'd have to say too. Their list of teams that they've put to the sword is definitely more impressive. If you look at of the big 3, they've beaten Cork 5 times, they've beaten Tipperary 4 times, they've beaten Kilkenny twice. And if you take out potential controversial line ball in 19, and we could be talking about them going for 6 in a row this year, realistically.
Are you trying to subtract an All-Ireland from Tipperary's record there?
I've been doing that for the last 4 years, Shane. You know that. You know that. It's the classic Jose Mourinho in 19. The best team lost.
Yeah. Colin Lyons Blindspot said, can you compare Limerick's 5 in a row to Cork's 5 in a row? Munster, tough to compare teams, but Limerick's system, fitness, athleticism, and game management would beat that Kilkenny.
Well, I wasn't even born when that Cork 5 in a row started. You were probably just about born, maybe. And by the time Cork had it completed, I wasn't even born at that stage. So I'm going to find it hard to compare. In fairness, now.
You were still a dirty look in your daddy's eye.
Oh.
If you could take one fella from the Kilkenny team for Limerick, that would be Owen Larkin.
If you could take one player, see, the thing you have to look at there is, what do Limerick actually need, and what did Kilkenny have? That's like, there's no point. Like, you could say you take Tommy Walsh, but why would you when you have Dermot Burns 5? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you'd take JJ, would you? Because you could play him fullback, wingback, cornerback. You know what I mean?
Michael Fennelly?
Imagine you had Michael Fennelly and Will O'Donoghue together in midfield.
Jeez, Adrian McGrath will be saying, what about Donovan beside him?
Yeah. Who'd be the one player? Saying that, you're putting Larkin into the team, and who are you edging out, Morrissey or Hegarty? Do you know what I mean? I think it's actually obvious enough. I think it's an inside man, and I think it's, if you look at, I'd say it's probably someone like Eddie Brennan, being honest with you, because if you look at what Limerick maybe don't have, it's probably someone like that. And who's more interchangeable? I don't think from 5 to 12 you'd change any of them, to be honest with you.
If you were to go back the other way, right, and you can say that the Kilkenny goalkeepers were regularly untested, but Nicky Quaid.
Yeah, Jesus.
King Lynch.
Instead of who? Henry at 11.
I'm not saying drop Henry Sheffield.
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm kind of thinking, what do you think that Kilkenny team was missing? They weren't missing much, but where would be a potential area of weakness or someone that could come in?
Well, at times where wasn't there talk about, like, that they had to...
Declan Hannon.
Yeah. And the other thing was that they had to put JJ back full back because of, different reasons and injuries and stuff like that, that they wanted to keep him out wing back. So maybe Sean Finn to play fullback, or Dan Morrissey.
I go with Declan Hannon.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah, you're fairly set on that.
Great question, to be fair.
Yeah. Don't forget Richie Hogan. He was great. Yeah, like at the peak of his powers. Very, very hard to beat Richie Hogan. Raymond Gilburn says 2 in a row or 3 in a row will become almost impossible in hurling. In the future, domination will be 2 or 3 years, or 3 and 5 years. I don't know. I think they'll keep happening. Like,
why? I'd be interested to hear why Raymond thinks that, to be honest with you.
But like a lot of the time, it's a case of, can you get the right management team group of players together to kind of build a decent team? And a lot of counties struggle to do that, because it's not like you can buy in players and just make things. Like, sometimes you're at the mercy of what you produce and the management team that you put together at a given time. So that generally happens where one county does and then other counties don't. So that's why you have these periods of dominance as well. One team tactically gets ahead. The next team, they don't have like 20 people doing analysis and trying to figure out the tactics of the opposition. And I think you will continue to have teams winning gluts of titles.
I think Cork would fancy their chances over the next 10 years of going on I would say, at different stages. It's also very interesting to think, what's the next step for Limerick, would say, when Connacht steps aside, whenever that is. That's not to say John Kiley will step aside whenever Connacht does, but like, he's widely regarded as the mind behind Limerick. And
do you think that bothers Kiley? Hearing that,
I honestly don't. I honestly don't think so, being honest with you, because I think if it did mind, like, he regularly deflects to Connacht in particular. And the players regularly deflect to him. I think, and I think that's one of the main reasons that Limerick have been so successful, is most inter-county managers have a fair ego, I would say. You kind of have to, nearly, to throw yourself into that. But I think Kiley seems to have no problem to say, Paul Connacht is unbelievably good at doing this. I will let him do that. And I remember Donal O'Grady saying one time, there was some training session going on down the Gaelic grounds, and there was some lads in watching the training, and they were looking back and they were like, well, who are these lads? What are they doing here? And he's like, should they really be in here looking at a Limerick training session? And Kiley just turned around and said to O'Grady, it's like this Dodge, I'd say, referred to him as, we don't even know what's going on out there. How are they supposed to know? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the level of Connacht's kind of thinking. So I honestly don't think it bothers Kiley. I actually think it's something he encourages, and he just delegates X to Connacht and Y and Z to everybody else, and he's happy for them to do their job.
Yeah, well, it's generally the people that are more worried about their ego, that are worried about other people getting credit.
Yeah.
Colin Ryan's blind spot says, were Limerick helped by the fact that 2 championships were played off in 18 months during COVID? If time ran as normal, would they have come into the pack a bit sooner? The one thing I'd say about that is after, like when teams win, generally there's a bit of going out and celebrating and taking the cup around to everywhere in the county and all that kind of stuff. And you often see players going off the rails a little bit, and it's very difficult for management to keep things right. And I would say that is one thing that definitely helped Limerick, that players basically weren't able to go absolutely mental after winning a couple of those All-Irelands. So they stayed indoors a bit more, and then maybe we're just hitting the age whereby you're getting a bit more mature. So I think that benefited them a little bit.
And just on that as well, the championships that Limerick won in 20 and 21 are the two that are most similar to the championships Kilkenny won, if you get me, as regards games-wise and longevity. Whereas the championships they won in 18 and the championships they won last year, like they're nearly double the amount of games that Kilkenny played. And so maybe it would have been more difficult to do an All-Ireland 3 in a row had they had to go through the round robin for the 3 years, but they've still gone through the round robin this year successfully and won Munster as well. So I'm not so sure of that argument. The lack of celebrations or the inability to celebrate is probably not a bad thing, to be fair as well.
Yeah. I think that's it from the show today, is it?
Yeah, we obviously we've come to the end and we have to talk about our goat of the weekend.
Oh God, yeah. Jeez, it never even crossed my mind. Colin Basquel, 2-2.
Colin Pascal from a Dublin point of view. I'm going to go with Dermot O'Connor from Kerry. Just thought he was unbelievable the other day, and all the talk. And Jack O'Connor said it tongue in cheek after we were told that we had no midfielders. He's after stepping up to the plate big time. Jack Barry was brilliant alongside him, but O'Connor got through for, I think he kicked 1-2 the other day, and that midfield battle is going to be crucial in the semi-final against Glaston Rogers. And it could be more crucial again, potentially in a final against Fenton and McCarthy. So, Dermot O'Connor for me.
Okay, Conor McManus actually we've probably overlooked a little bit there.
Yeah, we were talking about All-Stars there as well. Like, he could well be the first ever All-Star that probably didn't start the vast majority of championship games because he's been that influential. And I don't know if he's probably carrying a knock and he's carrying some years behind him as well. But like, Drew kind of mentioned there, he must go down as the greatest clutch player of all time in the history of the GAA. Like, if you wanted just the ball in someone's hands.
Oh, there's like you're after opening a can of worms there. The greatest clutch player in the history of the GAA.
I tell you what, come back to me with something. That's what I'll say to you. Jesus, he's been doing it.
People would say Shefflin is like a huge clutch player. Like if you look at Dublin over the years, is there one clutch player that stands out more than ever? I mean, Rock scored that free to win the All-Ireland in, was that 17? I mix up the years.
17, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was fairly clutch. Jack McCaffrey in big games taking it by the scruff of the neck.
Now, see, the thing about clutch, I would nearly say, in those real instances where the game is there to be won or lost. Like, Conor McManus got that ball the other day, and that was 10 seconds away from being his last play, I'd say, as a Monaghan player. He wins a free. He's like, I'm out in my playground here, kicks it over like it's nothing. That could have been his last play for Monaghan. And he just saunters it over the bar. The penalty he steps up to, that could be his last kick for Monaghan. It's top left corner. The second penalty he steps up to could have been his last kick for Monaghan. It's top right corner. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just, to me, he's absolutely nerveless. And he's had to deliver for his county because he's the marquee man. He's the one remember that score against Tyrone from the sideline? Do you remember that one? Like, there's just so many instances of, like, Monaghan have a fair amount of different clutch players this year. Carl O'Connell did it in one of the games. McManus has done it in a couple of games. But yeah, McManus would be nearly at the top of the tree now for me.
Like, I think we need comments in on this. Who's the greatest clutch player of all time in the big moments? Hey, Donal O'Donovan is probably considered a fair clutch player down in Clare. What's the greatest clutch scorer ever?
Jeez, that's right up there anyway. O'Donovan's
Will I tell you one that sticks out to me now? Obviously, Davy Glennon dived to win that free against Kilkenny in 2012. Canning did very well to knock over that free from the sideline around the 45, probably with the two management teams behind him.
Yeah, with Cunningham and Cody going at each other, and Mick Dempsey standing in behind him as well, giving him lots, and Martin Fogarty not too far behind.
And a few years after that, there was some old skills day, like with the media and whatever in Croke Park, and Canning was coming out on the pitch, and like because the media were doing the skills things and whatever, I actually just I had a ball down by the sideline, and I said to Canning as he just happened to be coming out, I said, "Geez, your free against Kilkenny was from around here," and I hit it and I put it over, and he actually said, "Would you believe I actually mishit that free?"
He said that, yeah. He said that after. It didn't look like it. It didn't look like it, put it that way.
Yeah, Joe Canning point versus tip. It didn't go as high as it normally would, though. His free was a little bit lower, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit lower. That, as regards clutch scores, like Canning basically won the All-Ireland against Tipperary in the semi-final. Like, that was the moment. That was the moment that they needed.
Rian O'Neill's free last year, that's a very good one from Colin Lyons blind spot. And actually, if Monaghan didn't get the equaliser, his beautiful slicer point against Monaghan there at the weekend as well.
Savage. As regards clutch scores that have changed the course of history, Cluxton's against Kerry in 2011 is one. Sean O'Shea's last year against Dublin is another.
Sorry, you've mispronounced his name.
Shawnee Shea. I saw what you did with the programme the other day. All right. I'd say Kerry folk would have really appreciated it.
Yeah. Just took out all the O's out of the O'Connors and so it's Sullivan's. Yeah, Sean O'Shea free last year. So yeah, keep the comments in, even if you're watching this not live. Get the comments in. Who's the greatest clutch player ever? And what's the greatest clutch score? There's probably clutch saves and stuff like that. Hey, actually, we have to credit Micheál A. Martin for his safe hands at the weekend. Unlike his father when he was over the country. Very good hands from him. Okay, that's it from the show. A reminder, we're brought to you by OurGame. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. The selection of jerseys and zip-up tops is unbelievable. There's actually saw plenty of them around Croke Park over the weekend, so people are absolutely loving them. Also, if you want us to run a club fundraiser for you, and I know a lot of clubs will need funds now heading into the latter, or as the season's going to kick off, events at ourgame.ie. Also, if you want us to do a coaching clinic at your club. There's a couple more I'll just read out while we're finishing up. Kerry goal against Wexford in 91. Verney Dooley's 21-yard goal beat us in 1994. Shefflin versus Canning points in the 2014 drawn game. Did you read? Oh, yeah.
That's definitely, because that was like the King puts Kilkenny up by a point. The Prince scores one down by the sideline in the next play to level it. Like, that was outrageous. That
was brilliant. Okay, we'll chat to you all again soon. If you want to get the audio podcast, it's at patreon.com/OurGame.